something very wrong with Mr. Wolf, and I'm not just talking about that weird look he has. What if I told you he's not just a fairy tale character, but a disguised werewolf living in the Peppa Pig universe? His name is literally Mr. Wolf. Like, seriously. That's the equivalent of putting a character named Mrs. Snake in charge of a nursery. The entire Peppa Pig cast has names that describe their species. Mrs. Sheep, Mr. Elephant, Mommy Rabbit. But then this guy shows up named Wolf, with those small eyes and that sneaky little smile, and nobody raises a red flag. In any 80s werewolf movie, this would be the character who suddenly appears in town. Nobody knows him. And soon after, sheep start disappearing from the farm. Coincidence? And it's not like wolves are harmless in the animal world. In fairy tales, they're literally the most recycled villains in history, like the big bad wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, the Three Little Pigs, and even Peter and the Wolf. And now tell me, who lives around there? Piglets, and sheep, and rabbits. So basically, it's the perfect feast. Peppa should be filing a police report, not singing happy birthday to his daughter in the middle of the woods, far from civilization. So grab your silver bullet pistols, subscribe to the channel, because today we're going to analyze one of the most fun theories about Peppa Pig, here on Zigzag. The thing that makes Mr. Wolf smell the worst is his overly happy and polite behavior. Seriously, whenever someone tries too hard to be super nice, it's to cover up some rot deep in their soul. Every time Mr. Wolf shows up in Peppa Pig, he's either smiling too much, speaking with an overly sweet voice, or suddenly appearing with some strange request. All that scout leader facade doesn't convince me one bit. I'm sure he watched Twilight and thought Jacob was right about sniffing people. And he always shows up at suspicious times, like late afternoon or early evening, the famous golden hour, to transform. In Teen Wolf, for example, that's when Scott starts feeling the changes and literally turns into a dog. And between us, Mr. Wolf always finds a way to leave the scene before it gets dark. Coincidence? Or maybe he just doesn't want anyone to see him taking off his jacket and howling in the woods? Wait, now that I thought about it, I got an idea. What if the reason Mr. Wolf disappears for several episodes is because he's transformed into a normal human? That's right. When the moon goes away, or when the script calls for it, he stops being a cute talking wolf and becomes an ordinary citizen. Like that extra who crosses the street in the background of a scene and nobody notices. Since the show only shows the animals with human bodies, Mr. Wolf's human side simply disappears from the narrative. There's your perfect reason for him showing up so little. He's living real life off camera, probably paying bills or complaining about traffic in the human world. And that fits perfectly with the vibes of classic movies. Like David Kessler from An American Werewolf in London, who lived chill until he turned into a furry beast devouring tourists. Or Scott Howard from Teen Wolf, who tried to hide his other identity at school. In both cases, they had this dual thing. Sometimes normal humans trying to live life, sometimes supernatural creatures fighting their instincts. And that's probably what Mr. Wolf is doing too. When he disappears for a few episodes, it's not lazy writing. It's transformation. Speaking of which, there's even more mystery about his lycanthropy. Check this out. Would you survive a fight against Mr. Wolf in Berserk mode? Then drop the hashtag wolf in the comments, but maybe you won't even need to, because if Mr. Wolf were a common werewolf, one of those who only transform with a full moon and a dramatic roar in the background, we might let it slide. But no, the guy shows up in broad daylight under the big bright sun, all chill, teaching everyone how to be a scout as if that were normal. That can only mean one thing. His lycanthropy is different. Maybe he's part of a rare subspecies. Like the werewolves from the originals, who don't depend solely on the moon to transform. What's certain is that if he really is a werewolf, he's playing in a different league. The kind that don't need permission to turn into a beast. And here comes the conspiracy theory. Has he lost control of the transformation for so long that he got stuck in his wolf form? Like Professor Lupin from Harry Potter, who even with a potion still struggled to keep his consciousness? Or maybe he never went back to normal and now lives disguised among the city's animals, hiding his dark secret with a suit, a briefcase, and a civilized good afternoon? Maybe he's pretending to be just another cartoon character, when in reality he's the link between Peppa's world and a darker universe. And the worst part? No one there seems to notice. Did you notice that Mr. Wolf lives in a normal house, made of bricks with friendly windows and even a little nameplate? But there's a bizarre detail in all of this. The house was built by Daddy Pig, who, coincidentally, is an engineer. Now hold on to this theory. What if Daddy Pig knew the true nature of Mr. Wolf? What if, just like in the story of the three little pigs, he decided to build a house strong enough to resist huffing and puffing, just to test if the neighbor's predator instinct would come out? Imagine the scene. Daddy Pig finishing the work, slowly backing away and saying, "Let's see if it holds." And then Mr. Wolf unintentionally blows a puff that almost tears off the front door. A classic werewolf containment test, like a Turing test for creatures of the night. This raises the suspicion that Daddy Pig might be acting like a disguised hunter, trying to keep the threat under control with reinforced architecture. After all, if anyone remembers the three little pigs with trauma, it's a family of pigs. That trauma may have led to protective measures, including, look at this. There's an episode where Daddy Pig travels by train to a well-hidden country in Eastern Europe. The kind of place that looks like it came straight out of a Bram Stoker book. And guess what? There, he is treated like an honored guest, with a reception more lavish than that of the actual royalty present in the carriage. Or could it be that he is recognized for something way beyond being an engineer? Maybe for being an internationally respected supernatural creature hunter? Now connect the dots. Van Helsing, the legendary monster hunter, had disciples spread across Europe. Maybe Daddy Pig is one of the last heirs of this dark legacy, trained to identify and neutralize threats like werewolves. That work trip might have actually been a secret mission, a reunion with old allies, or a checkup of Sacred Arsenal. Because you never know when you'll need a silver bullet hidden in a concrete block. Scared of being bit by Mr. Wolf? Then transform yourself too into a channel subscriber. Just click the red button down there and be safe forever. If there's anyone who knows how to live a double life in Peppa Pig, it's Madame Gazelle. The woman managed to hide for years that she's an immortal vampire, and even taught entire generations without anyone suspecting a thing. So who's to say she didn't also help Mr. Wolf control his impulses? After all, as we've seen in Underworld and Castlevania, vampires and werewolves have an ancient relationship. Sometimes war, sometimes alliance. Maybe this time they decided to play on the same team. One creature of the night helping the other live in the world of suburban families. The true power of supernatural friendship. And that's why maybe Mr. Wolf is like the Hulk from the movie with Edward Norton. At the beginning of that movie, Bruce Banner learns to control the transformation with breathing techniques, meditation, and, who would have thought, yoga. Maybe Mr. Wolf followed the same path. He spent years practicing Tai Chi in the backyard, doing therapy with Madame Gazelle, and listening to forest ASMR to tame the inner beast. And maybe that is the greatest lesson of all. We live surrounded by little monsters inside, weird impulses, and emotional full moon days. But even a werewolf can choose to be kind. With control, patience, and maybe a chamomile tea, even the scariest creatures can live a peaceful life. In the end, Mr. Wolf doesn't want to devour anyone. He just wants to join the school parties and help with his daughter's birthday without causing collective trauma. What's your opinion?